Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown, and this is Caregiver Support Live. We connect on the first Friday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and we take your questions about your caregiving experience. My co-host is joining me today, Jennifer Ritchie. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
I am good. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Okay, let's start. So here's our first question. My sister wants our 85-year-old mother to move closer to her. Our mother, who is in good health, still drives, is active in her church, and has lots of friends. And she wants to remain in her home and not move 600 miles away. I'm supportive of her staying home and have told her I will be available to help her as much as possible. I'm 3 hours away. My sister is livid that our mother won't move, is calling her selfish, and says she will no longer be available to help her. I think our mom has a right to make her own decisions and don't understand why my sister is so angry. I really don't want a family rift at this point in our lives. How can I help my sister understand our mom's wishes? Okay,
All
Jennifer, what do you
right.
think?
Well, on the surface, this is sort of a family relationship question, but I think it opens up a bigger conversation about family emergency planning and planning for aging parents, and which is what we do as CCCs. So, um, I don't really understand why the sister is so angry either. I think there's probably a middle ground. Um, the one thing that struck me with this is that the mom has a community around her and goes to church and has friends. And that's so important as someone is aging. And often we hear about people who don't have that and how that can really affect how quickly they age. And so that was the first thing that, well, she needs to have that. If she already has that, we don't want to pull her away from that. But I think this is a perfect time to have the conversation. Like, she's still in good health. Let's not do it when she's sick in the hospital and emotions are high and all of that. Let's have a conversation. This would be a perfect situation for one of us, the CCC, to come in and help them, create a plan, because it doesn't have to happen immediately, but that the other sister really is feeling that. So I feel like there is a middle ground here. I just don't know what it is because I'm not so sure why the other sister is so angry. Um, yeah, what do you
To
think?
me, yeah, to me, when I read it, I thought her sister made an offer. Her mother, in her mind, rejected it. And I think
Yeah,
her anger is around the rejection. Of course, we don't know for sure.
yeah,
I think we all know when we make an offer and someone rejects it that we just feel that rejection. And so her sister might be turning this into a story that simply isn't true. A story
exactly.
about why she was rejected. Oh, mom loves the other sister more, or just the idea that she feels her mom is selfish. There's some story she's telling herself that
Hmm.
is not clear to others who are involved, their
Hmm.
mother and the other sister who wrote the question. I think in situations like this where someone's emotional response feels a little out of whack, is that it's good to give space and time.
Yeah,
And I think it's interesting that you're talking about what's the plan in case there is an emergency, because in truth, we never think to plan for an emergency because it always seems like, oh, why bother? Why borrow trouble when we know that an emergency can happen at any moment at any time. I guess we could give guidance then to the sister who wrote the letter around what the conversation looks like going forward, allowing her other sister to be angry. She is
hmm,
not going to talk her sister out of an emotional response. Her sister is going to continue to be angry. And it could be that the sister says, I get it. We worry about making sure that mom is safe and that she has access to the help and support she needs. I wonder if we thought about future planning, seems like mom's okay where she is right now. What about future planning? How would you feel about getting involved in a conversation with a professional like a certified caregiving consultant and talk it out so that we have some plans in place in case there's an emergency? How does that sound?
I think that sounds great. I wonder if the other sister would be open to it. I think after some time and space, like you said, maybe. Um, and I think the word selfish is interesting because
Yes.
I think we always see that in a negative light, and I don't see it as being negative here. If mom is wanting to be a little selfish right now, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's an advocating for herself, and what she wants. Just because
Yeah.
she's 85 doesn't mean she doesn't have the ability to still make choices for her life. So
And
uh,
she's living a full life.
yeah,
And to take someone out of that full life for what could happen at some point in the future seems a little unnecessary. Maybe that's
yeah,
the word I'll say.
yeah,
We certainly don't want to wait until there's a crisis and then think, oh my gosh, there's been a terrible crisis. Mom can't live at home any longer. What do we do next? So your point about let's think this through is really important. I just don't think we have to jump the gun and go automatically into she has to move because we know a
right,
crisis is coming.
right.
I just think it's hard to move someone out of an established life that is full.
Especially when they're older, and if
Yes.
a dementia situation were to happen, that's even harder, and can make it so much worse.
It's very difficult to replicate that kind of support that her mother has right now in a
Mhm.
new environment, in a new community. And I also think it's one sister then taking on all of it if her mother moves. And I'm not sure she has thought that through. It sounds like it's just a knee-jerk reaction to my mom hurt my feelings. I thought she'd want to live by me. I thought we had a closer relationship. I thought she loved me more. I don't get why she doesn't see how loving I am and what a good daughter I am to make this offer to her. And that I think, I think the hurt feelings will mend. And I guess to caution the letter writer is not to get too invested in resolving the situation, in inserting herself in the drama around her sister's anger, and to let her sister just have that response, but continue forward without getting caught up in that response.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
I'm always amazed at stories that we tell ourselves inside of our head. And I think about these stories around offers that we make, and when an offer is refused, then the story we tell. I also think that sometimes we tell a story about, I can't ask or make an offer for someone to help and support because they won't. And I think about this because we're going through funeral planning for my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law died last week. I've been helping her sister and brother with funeral planning. And when we met with the pastor this past week, we were going through who does what during the service. And when we got to the eulogy, they were like, well, you'll have to do it, Denise. Now, of course I would. Of course I would. I thought there's got to be someone in the family. And then we got to the readings and they're like, well, we'd want to do it the way that, so my sister-in-law was married to my brother who died 3 years ago. And so when my sister-in-law was dying, she said, just do everything for me as you did for Tim. Tim was my brother. And we were looking at the service. And so it would be, for instance, my sister would have done a reading. I thought, there's got to be someone in their family who wants to step up and take on some ownership during the service. And they were like, no. I said, are you sure? And then one of the daughters called. So her brother's daughter called. And he said, well, my daughter just called. Maybe I'll ask her. I said, that would be great. That would be great. And so he asked, and she said, of course, I'll do whatever you want. So the first request they made of her was, will you do a reading? And I heard her say, yes, I'll do anything you want. And I thought she should do the eulogy. So then we took a little bit of a break. And then I talked to her sister later. And I said, I think your niece could do the eulogy. What do you think about that? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think she could do it, I said. So she's doing the eulogy because we
Mm,
don't want to decide someone's,
yeah.
what would be the word, their ability to manage an emotional experience, like giving a reading or sharing a eulogy during a service. I think it's most important that we offer and then allow them to tell us what's most important or what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And it's then for us to say, well, I offered and I offered without any strings attached.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way you stop yourself from telling a story about, well, I offered and look at what they did, right? Which is what the sister of the letter
Yeah.
writer is doing. If she had offered to her mom, hey, mom, what do you think about moving? I'd love to have you live closer to me. If the conversation had been a little more open, perhaps the mom would have said, not right now. I'm good where I am. Wonder if we could talk about this in a year.
Yeah.
And then that conversation continues rather than moves into drama.
It does sound like it was sort of a, I'm offering you this. We're not having a conversation around it. It's just an offer. It was rejected, and now the conversation's over when it could have been, let's figure out what we can do. Yeah.
Yes,
I think you
not
bring
right now. Yeah, not right now. Let's talk about it again in 6 months. Let's talk about it
Mhm.
again in a year.
Yeah,
Okay, so how do we feel about that answer for that question?
I think that's good.
Okay, here's the next one. This one's a little tougher.
This one is,
Okay, so here's the question. Here's what the family caregiver wrote. I strongly suspect that my husband is developing dementia. His doctors have found nothing wrong with him. I understand that many, and she has this in quotes, cognitive tests might not find anything amiss in the early stages of disease. And I imagine that what are now subtle changes will eventually become obvious. In the meantime, our decades-long relationship has eroded. My insistence that he engage with me in maintaining a quality relationship has led to endless fighting and brought me to the brink of divorce. Since I've come to understand that early stage dementia is at the root of our problems, I've quit trying to fix our relationship. Our fighting has stopped, but it's a lonely place to be. I'm not thrilled about spending my retirement years as a caregiver. It's a huge sacrifice that will narrow my life significantly. Do we both need to go down with the ship? Can I leave him now and let his family deal with this? Or am I obligated to stay and care for him?
this is a heavy one. I have so many thoughts here. I feel like we're missing a paragraph here. Because and I'm sure I'm reading into it, but I feel like there is, what's missing is what's wrong in their relationship, because I kind of find it hard to believe that the early stage dementia is the root of the problem. It might not be helping the problem, but I don't know. I feel like, she's saying it's eroded. Um, and there's more to it than just he's got some subtle changes. So all of that to say is I think the two need to be separated. Like if there wasn't this dementia piece to it, would you want to leave? Um, I don't know if it's possible to separate them, but it's a thought. Uh, The other thing, ultimately she can do whatever she wants, but um, there is this, we took vows for sickness and health, and that's to be considered as well. But I also understand being a caregiver, it significantly limits your life. And if it's doing it for someone that you're not fully committed to, that can be a really awful experience. So there's a lot of questions here for me. And a lot of these questions, there's no right answer to. It's really just what she is going to have to live with, you know? Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Denise?
Don't think she has enough information yet. There
Yeah,
hasn't been an official
yeah.
diagnosis, and so the doctor is not going to help with this. And
Hmm.
my suggestion is that she find a neurologist. She
Hmm.
could look for an Alzheimer's disease research center. She could look at a university hospital near her. She needs to see her husband needs to see a neurologist to really understand what's going on
Yeah.
because they don't know. She's assuming. She's also assuming based on what one type of dementia could look like without understanding that there are that dementia is an umbrella term and that there's Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
there's frontal temporal dementia, or they might call it something a little different, but FTD. And if the diagnosis is FTD, there is significant change in behavior with someone who has FTD. There can be significant change in behavior until they have a clear diagnosis. I don't think she can make a decision that feels right.
Hmm.
It's also helpful for her to talk out her assumptions around what the caregiving experience is going to be like for her.
Hmm.
And it it does impact your life. We know that. We often look at it as sacrifices, and there are sacrifices. We hope it's more compromises than sacrifices, but I mean, realistically,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And if they get a diagnosis, and especially with a neurologist or a practice that also has support for the family, then she can also talk it out with the social worker and other members of the family. And she can share, here's what I'm concerned about. I cannot give my life up for this. I want to make sure that my life is not so narrow that it loses quality of life for me.
Yeah.
Her desire to maintain quality of life is absolutely critical.
Hmm.
And it's important she says that and then looks to professionals and other family members to figure out what's quality of life for her husband, what's quality of life for her, how does moments of quality of life exist for both of them together, and then decide, you know what? Okay, I can do this. I think I can do this right now.
Yeah.
Let's wait another 6 months and revisit this. I think it's the either or that actually is the theme of both of these questions
Yeah.
that often is not really where we want to go. We want to go with what's right now. And when is the next time to revisit the decision so that we can decide what's right then.
Yeah. Well, and I have a hunch here that she wants to leave and she doesn't want people to think it's because of the dementia, and because they would maybe judge her. I don't know that that's the truth, but I think that happens a lot in this situation. Um, so that's why I was saying, like, I think it needs to be separate because, okay, let's just say she got that diagnosis. How does that change how she feels? Would it or would it not? I remember when I was taking care of my mom and I was being coached, and I kept saying, if I just knew that she had dementia, I think I would be able to accept it. It's the like not knowing. And the coach said to me, let's just pretend she does. Like, how does that change things for you? And I was like, well, I guess it doesn't, like the facts are still the same, just the label of it doesn't really change anything. And I think she thinks the label's going to change something. So but I love everything you
There,
said.
there is a fear that's underneath
Yeah.
what she's written. And it's important that she's able to speak that fear out loud
Yeah.
with a supportive system, a therapist, a certified caregiving consultant, whoever it might be. It's very important that she speak that fear honestly. I think about a family caregiver who I met a couple years ago, and it was a situation where she was caring for her husband. I think it was at least a second marriage, so there were stepchildren involved. And sometimes I think you get into a situation where you feel like everybody's looking to you as the spouse to do it all. And I think the stepchildren looked to her as the default. Oh, she'll just do it. She's with our dad. Everything will be okay because she's going to do it all. And she divorced him. She
Mm,
left because she felt that they were asking too much of her. And I often think about that situation because I wonder what could have happened if there had been some kind of facilitated conversation about what's really appropriate for the stepmother to do.
mhm.
And how can we ensure that she has quality of life as well? I think oftentimes that's what's missing in the conversation is that there isn't enough focus on what's quality of life for a family caregiver.
Yeah.
We we are so invested in quality of life for our carees. It's
Mhm.
incredibly important to us. And quality of life for ourselves has to be just as important. And quality of life, as we define it, is different for all of us.
And until you do it, you don't realize how much it impacts your quality of life. So, it's
Yeah.
easy to stand back and watch and say, well, they'll be fine when this person is drowning.
One thing too, I think if when you get a diagnosis, you also have an idea of the disease process and the prognosis. And if you understand the prognosis and how the disease process is going to play out over a period of time, I think that also can help you make a decision. We don't know how old he is. We don't know how long he's been exhibiting signs that something's not quite right. We don't know what other underlying medical conditions he has, which is why it's imperative,
Yeah.
imperative to get the right diagnosis from the right specialist. Because all of that is good information to think about what's the right decision. For instance, I'm going to say something that I have no medical degree, so I'm just kind of making something up. But what if it's not dementia, but it's some other disease process like cancer? And
Yeah.
his prognosis is much different than it would be if it were something like dementia. And what if it was a tumor?
Mhm.
The prognosis is going to be very different. And the amount of time they have left together is going to be very different. That's why it's so important to get the right diagnosis with the right prognosis and understanding of a disease process. That's incredibly important information as you're thinking about, I don't want to be here. The other thing is, she might just need to take a break for two
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
She might just need to go somewhere by herself for 2 weeks and get away from it and see how she feels when she has to return. I know re-entry can sometimes be hard where you just think, I can't go back. But if she really cannot go back, if she goes back and thinks, oh my heavens, this is a terrible situation for both of us, that's good information for her to know
Yeah.
that even with a break, it's intolerable for her
Yeah.
because both of them deserve quality of life.
That sentence, my insistence that he engage with me in maintaining a quality relationship has led to endless fighting. It brings up so much like, what does that mean? Like, what is she asking of him? What is he responding? That's where I felt like there's something missing here. Like, I wish we knew a little more details because is she asking something of him that he cannot do because of some diagnosis or not? Or is he really just completely shutting her out too? It's hard to know. And I think
Right.
it would
And
change the dynamic too.
right, because when you understand what the correct diagnosis is, then you have an idea of what's
Yeah.
appropriate, what's possible, what's a realistic expectation, and then you adjust your own behavior and expectations based on that.
I do think your point about it potentially being cancer or something like that is great because we don't know. We just make assumptions.
Right, we just make assumptions. We just make assumptions. And it's unfortunate that a doctor just said, well, he took a 5-minute cognition test
Mhm.
during his appointment and I don't see any problem.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, you've noticed something about your husband and it's important that we act on it. I can do a little mini test to kind of get us more information. However, what's most important is that he see a specialist. So I'll make a referral for you.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's a blood test now that that they can use to
I just
diagnose,
read about that.
which I think, thank goodness,
I
thank
know.
goodness. We have to remove the guessing game around diagnosis. And I also know that unfortunately, many doctors still don't go down that road of trying to understand whether or not there's a cognitive impairment or a cognitive decline. They just don't say anything. And sometimes a family member thinks, well, the doctor didn't say anything, so he's fine. We don't have to do anything about it. But if it's a blood test that's part of all the other normal testing, that takes, it's no longer subjective, it's objective.
Yeah,
And it can indicate that we need to do further tests. And I think that's really, really helpful.
I agree.
Crystal has joined us today. Crystal, I just wanted to check in with you and see what would you add to what we talked about today with our 2 questions?
Um, I think for the first one, I appreciate um, the suggestion of not going down, for the sister to not react to the other sister's anger and not get embroiled in the drama of that, because again, her feelings are her feelings, and we don't know what her relationship with her mother is. There's a lot of family systems, family dynamic stuff that's entangled in this, I'm sure, as with every family. Um, and who knows if she's made offers like this before and she felt rejected before. Like there may be a history there. And so I think that's a really good suggestion, not to get embroiled in that, cooling off, taking that time, and then broaching the subject again. Maybe we can revisit this in a few months. And I don't know if the 3 of them have to talk together, the 2 sisters and the mom, or the sister and the mom, or have a CCC come in, or whomever. But I really like that, because an emotional response, you're not going to get very much. You're just going to get angry too. Someone's going to say something offensive, then you're going to stop talking, all of this stuff. And so sometimes, and maybe even the fear of what's happening with her mother as she's aging, and her concerns is coming out in anger because she's trying to have some type of control. If I can just get my mom close to me, then I can know how she's doing or whatever. So there may be some other things that are happening. So I really appreciated that. And then for the second one, man, my eyes got really big when you guys were reading. I just said, wow, that's a lot. And it's so true what you were saying, Jennifer. There's just not enough information. There's some things probably that has been happening in the marriage that's not even related necessarily to any assumption about a dementia or anything else, that had been kind of growing. And maybe there wasn't any support at that time either to say, hey, maybe we need to see a marital counselor. I think there's something going on. But now now it's even scarier now that the fact that this person could be, and now I'm going to be with this person who I'm struggling with all these years. We don't know how long that's been. I think there's also fear there too. It's like, am I going to be stuck in a relationship that I can't get out of? And now I'm my whole life. And so I think there's some fear there too. And so I really appreciated your talking about, hey, let's talk about this fear and these anxieties or these other things, because we don't want to make decisions based on those things, lasting permanent decisions based on our fear or a worry that may not be, or assumption about what a diagnosis may look like. And then there'll be regret on the other end, remorse, or hardening of the heart. I don't know. So I taking a step back, taking a breather, taking a time away, maybe actually herself seeking help for herself. Hey, these are the things I'm experiencing. I mean, whether it's relationally, or I think my husband has a diagnosis. She's going to need someone to talk to, because as you guys were talking about, we can start making up stories in our own mind and just go down the whole thing. Yeah, and it was a diagnosis and he had dementia, and none of those things may be true, or some of them might be. But yeah, that she would actually get herself personally a place where she can share some of these thoughts and feelings, and maybe have someone guide her through it. So that's what I would add.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And as you were talking, you reminded me of something. That is, sometimes we manage the future rather than manage the moment. I coached a family caregiver that would manage the future when things went sideways. If she had a difficult time getting her mom into the bathroom on time, she would automatically jump to, I cannot get my mom to the bathroom on time. It means my mom can no longer live with me. I need to look at nursing home placement, and my brothers are going to be so mad at me.
Wow.
And then we would go back to the moment, right? I know, we would go
Yeah.
back to the moment and say, what happened? What's the adjustment? What's the tweak in the schedule? So that you and your mom can make it to the bathroom on time before there's an accident. And then it didn't go to her, the worst case scenario she had created in her head. And so sometimes I think of the two nicest words that we can give ourselves is right now. What's right now? And then what can I do in the future when I notice things are changing to make a different decision about right now? We don't have to figure out everything for the future. We can think through, we can plan, we can strategize based on what could happen, but we don't have to project ourselves into the future and decide, oh, it's going to be terrible, without
Right.
letting the future unfold for us.
Yeah. That's a good wisdom it's helping me right now, because I found myself projecting all the way into the future. Oh my God, my stepmom, she'll never be healed. And then I was already going down that road. And so I realized, wait a minute, just today, what's happening right in this moment. So it's very
Yes.
easy to do. It's very
Oh,
easy to do.
absolutely. Especially because we are crisis managers, which means on a regular basis, there's a crisis, there's a catastrophe. So it is, I think, a challenge for us not to catastrophize everything. And it's helpful for us to step back and just look at, okay, what does this moment need? What do I need in this moment? What does my Carrie need in this moment? Can be helpful.
I have a little mantra that I say that's related to that, where I have a colleague who she does like marathons and half marathons, and she relates it to coaching, and you need to just run the mile you're in. Like, don't think
There
about
you
the
go.
26th mile. Think
Well,
about the mile
yes.
you're in right now. So I say that to myself all the time. Just run
Oh,
the mile you're in.
I love that.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good one. I think I'm going to actually say, think about the block you're walking right now, because
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I would love to be able to say, think about the mile you're running right now, but then I would be like, oh my God, I'm not
Swim the
running a mile.
lap you're
But
swim the lap you're in.
right, that's right. Swim the lap you're in, walk the block you're walking. There we go. Crystal,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to have you with us. Always great to hear your perspectives and insights too. Yeah.
I appreciate
And
this so
Jennifer,
much.
yeah, it's fun, isn't it? It's just nice to get together and brainstorm how we could help a fellow family caregiver. And that's really what our goal is during our Caregiver Support Live, which happens again on the first Friday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And you're welcome to join us live. And if you have a question that you want us to tackle for you, you can also send us an email with your question to question@caringourway.com. And you can register to join us for any of our upcoming events by joining us at caringourway.com. And Jennifer, you're one of our certified caregiving consultants. You offer free complimentary sessions. How can our listeners and viewers be in touch with you?
The easiest way to sign up for a free session and chat is becomingbrave.as.me.
Okay. Jennifer and Crystal, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Have a-
everybody for watching and listening. We so appreciate you being a part of our community. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.